Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today I want to talk a little bit about difficulty in the Division 2. Now this has been an issue, or at least something that a lot of people have spoken about for a very long time, but I think definitely within these past few weeks you've seen it become a more prevalent topic with the announcement of Project Resolve and some of the details on the changes and buffs and various improvements they're making to talents and gear and all of that within that update. And so this is something that I've talked about before and I definitely have some thoughts on, so I wanted to share those and as usual get all of your guys' thoughts on it as well. And if you enjoy videos like these, again, we've been doing more of these live commentary ones. You guys seem to really be enjoying them, which I appreciate. Definitely be sure to hit the like if you do so, and if you aren't already, be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any of the ones that I end up doing in the future. But let's get into this. So like I said, I've been seeing this go around a lot lately, a lot of different thoughts, a lot of different takes on specifically endgame difficulty within the Division 2. People have already thought for quite a while that the Division 2 is quite easy when it comes to its toughest, or what's supposed to be the toughest endgame challenges. And by all accounts, it looks like Project Resolve is just going to make those things easier. Right, we're getting big buffs to a lot of the different weapons of the game. The majority of exotic weapons are getting buffed by the fact that you can now roll anything on the third attribute. Just stats in general are going to go up even more, which has already been a big, point of contention since Season 9 when the expertise system got brought in. And really it boils down to the question for a lot of people of why should I continue playing the game if there's really nothing that's challenging me anymore. Of course, loot is fun to chase, but again, there's not really much loot to chase these days because most of the new stuff just gets added through the season. You earn it within a day or two of the new season coming out. So it's a valid question for a lot of people, right? Why should they continue playing the game when they've already done everything and there's really nothing that's left to challenge them? Now, it's important to note, as when we talk about any big topics like this, these statements are not all-encompassing, right? The idea that the Division 2 is too easy. Because the fact is, there are a lot of people out there who still struggle with the Division 2. I get comments a lot from people who say that they really struggle to play anything above maybe like hard difficulty when it comes to missions or open world. There's plenty of people I've seen specifically who say that they can't get past the first few rooms of descent. They find that to be too difficult. So it's important to remember that these takes and discussions are much more nuanced than just those generalizations, right? It's not saying that everybody is just cakewalking through the Division 2. But I think for the majority of people who say that they think the Division 2 is too easy, what they're really saying is that the top end PvE content and difficulty scaling has just flattened out. Right, with all of the power that we've gotten over the past few years, there's just not much left to really challenge somebody who has any basic understanding of how to put together a decent build. Fortunately, for myself personally, I don't feel the weight of this as much because I play a lot of PvP, and that's where I spend the majority of my time in this game. And obviously PvP isn't subject to those same kinds of issues when it comes to difficulty against AI enemies. But ironically enough, my lowest amount of playtime in the Division 2 was back in year 1 when there was the most amount of content coming out. Because at that point, if you'll remember, if you played then, and if not, then you're about to find out, that the game was super easy back then when it came to PvE stuff. There was very little PvE challenge back in year 1 of Division 2. And the PvP was balanced and scaled very differently because of year 1.0, and I didn't find that PvP to be all that compelling or exciting. So that was my lowest playtime of the game, because I do care about PvE difficulty when I'm playing that type of content. And like I said, the PvP I didn't find as engaging. And then when Warlords of New York came out, they took a big swing in the other direction and made pretty much the entire game way more difficult when it came to PvE stuff. And that was very well documented how a lot of people did not like that. I did personally, because I'm more of a hardcore player. I like when there's challenge in general across the endgame. But because, again, of all of the feedback that they got at that point, they started to then kind of switch back in the other direction. And ever since the release of Warlords, the game has just gotten continually easier up until where we are today. And that's kind of come in two different ways, I would say. One is the traditional power creep issue that pretty much any live game or MMO like this has, where to make new stuff more exciting, you make it, 2, 3, 4, 5% more powerful. And if you keep doing that over time and seasons and years, yeah, eventually the overall average of the power of the items we have is going to go up, and that's how you power creep. And where I really think you could see this beginning was back in Season 3, when we got the Scorpio and the Memento as our 2 exotics for that season. Both of those items were and still are to this day extremely strong. And I think that's really where you start to see the shift. Or I guess the Scorpio was in Season 4. But yeah, Season 3 was Memento, and so those 2 seasons is really where it all began. And that's continued up until this day, right? In year 5, we've gotten stuff like the St. Elmo's and the Ouroboros, which are now 2 of, if not the 2, best guns in the endgame statistically. But beyond just your gradual power creep, we're going to take on these manhunts, I guess. You've also then seen the much bigger chunks of power added to our characters in the forms of the expertise system, like I previously talked about. And now with Project Resolve, they're doing huge buffs to existing weapon archetypes that we have and various talents that are in the game. All right, here we go. If I can keep it to just this one guy, I might have a chance. If everyone pushes up, then I got a problem. Oh! I'll take it, you know? I will take that all day of the week. And so, getting back to the conversation, because we've seen this trend of power creep and just power enhancement going on for so long, as usual, you see a lot of people saying the devs are just completely clueless about this issue, they're unaware of what they're doing, or they don't know how to fix it. I, unsurprisingly, will play devil's advocate here. I disagree. Whatever their motivations might be for continuing to add items of increasing power, I don't know, but I do think that they are aware of this general trend that is happening within the game, and to kind of support that, I fished up this old clip that I knew they had said at one point, but it took me a little while to find it. But this was from the Season 9 Special Report stream, which happened back in May 2022, so a little under 2 years ago. Take a listen to what Yannick says here, and I might splice this up a little bit just so that it gets to the core points of what I'm trying to say. So take a listen.
Will there be more legendary missions? I think it goes to the difficulty conversation. And one thing that at least I can comment on is the fact that yes, we know that with expertise, we are going to make players more powerful. So of course the question comes of like, okay, but what, if you're that powerful, what's going to be the challenging content? And so far the most challenging difficulty is legendary and the raids. These are the two main challenges that remain in our game. So there's the question of extending legendary to more activities, and yes, that's something that's on our list of we would like to do, but that's something that it's not just it's not a difficulty you turn on. It's actually something that is handcrafted for every mission that currently has it. But the main question is really how do we make sure we create a system where all that power you gain, you still have challenges ahead of you. It's more about difficulty in general with our game. So adding more legendary will just be a bit of a band-aid on the difficulty question, but at the end of the day, the real question is how do we create new challenges for the players that are at the top of the top, and for whom even legendary is not really a challenge anymore, and it's going to be even less of a challenge with all of that. That's more the way we want to think about it.
All right, so in that, you see him pretty much say what people are even saying right now, which is that legendary difficulty and other high-end PvE challenges within the Division 2 are simply too easy. And again, this was 2 years ago. This is not something that they're just now finding out about. Like I said, regardless of what the motivations have been behind the changes they made, they know that this is a thing that's happening. Now, something you have to keep in mind when it comes to big topics and issues like difficulty within the game is that big changes like that and ideas to maybe remedy it need to be very deliberate, and it takes time for them to formulate. The team does not have the same capacity nor resources that they did, say, back in year 1, right, when they were developing Warlords, and they did TU6, which did like a Gear 1.5, and they did a bunch of changes there. These are not the days of old where you can just recognize that there's an issue and then whip up something to fix it within one title update. I don't know. What are you doing there? That was very strange. Right? Those days are just no longer here. When they make changes now, or they decide that they want to set out to fix something, it's usually a much more, like I said, deliberate kind of plan that they lay out and try and execute over a longer period of time. Oh, you think you're gonna go rogue on me? That's a hell of a choice, man. I respect it, but that was a hell of a choice. And so, once again, that clip that I showed was a bit under 2 years ago, and my general point here is that it would not shock me in the least if ever since then they have kind of been formulating how to eventually tackle the issue of endgame difficulty in the game. This kind of follows up on a point I made in my last live commentary video that I did a few days ago. I'll link it on screen and in the description if you want to check it out, kind of just talking about the general future direction of the Division 2. But in there, I hint at, and we'll expand upon it here, that it is my theory that the Year 6 Season 2 endgame redesign that's coming to the game, right, Seasons 2.0, all of those changes, I think that that is going to at least attempt to tackle holistic difficulty within the endgame. From what we do know about that overall redesign, and the details have been scarce, but they've said that they plan to restructure the purpose behind various endgame activities, right? For example, why would you want to play something like Countdown over Summit? It seems like they also want to tackle a redistribution of endgame loot. Again, kind of in a similar vein, but why would you want to do certain activities over another if they're all providing the same loot? This guy just doesn't get it. I'm sorry, sir. You can't just come up and take that from me. Especially if you're going to steal it. You could have opened it and not gone rogue, and maybe I wouldn't have shot you.
Hostile hive detected.
Ooh, and we got some Ninja Bike knee pads out of that. That is a sweet deal right there. So like I said, purely my own theory and speculation here, but I do believe that this update that we're getting in Year 6 Season 2 will attempt to fix the issue of a lack of difficulty within the Division 2's endgame. And keep in mind there, I said attempt to. There's no guarantee that it's going to be a success or that players who want to see increased difficulty will think that these changes actually accomplish that. But that brings into question, what could they possibly do within this endgame redesign to reintroduce challenge to the Division 2's endgame, especially when, as we've talked about, there's been so much power creep and there's been so much direct power gain through systems like the expertise system. I'm sure there are many possibilities that maybe some of you can think of and put down in the comments below. One that I thought of is to try and incorporate the expertise progression into what I would call kind of assumed endgame difficulty. So for instance, like legendary and raid NPCs and AI, which Yannick said in that clip is like the hardest PvE content in the game. Maybe they do a bit of a rebalancing there so that instead of the way that it's currently tuned, they retune it to where those NPCs and enemies have the equivalent of level 30, let's say, expertise, damage, and armor. And I think that could be an interesting premise to kind of look at, because then it means that no matter how high you get in the system, you're going to be under-leveled for those activities no matter what. But the higher up you go in expertise, you'll close that gap more and more and more. And then, maybe every season when the expertise cap increases by 1, they also raise the legendary and raid enemies by 1 in terms of, like I said, their armor and damage in comparison to the expertise system. I feel like that could be an interesting way to maybe go about it, because then, like I said, it really incentivizes endgame PvE players to go after progressing their builds through the expertise system, because it allows them to close that gap and become more powerful in those activities, but they're still always going to be a bit underleveled, so that challenge should still remain. That said, I'm sure more beyond just that one idea would likely be needed to fully remedy the issue. That's just one idea. Maybe they would need to do further like mechanical changes to how things work, but who knows, folks. That is just my general take on the situation of difficulty within the Division 2. As I said, it's been a very popular one that everyone has been talking about lately, so I thought it would be interesting to spotlight it in a video here. And so I want to hear your thoughts on the matter. What is your position on the Division 2's endgame difficulty from whatever content you play or whatever your skill level is? Do you feel like the Division 2 is too easy, or do you still feel like you're relatively challenged when you take on different activities? And depending on where you fall there, what do you think the game should or maybe should not do in terms of potentially increasing difficulty on, like I said, those higher end PvE activities like legendaries, like raids, maybe even heroic to a degree? So that is going to do it for me today, everybody. Thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. RogueGold. Ow.